All right, everybody, Rob Peretti here, and I'm about to do something that, let's just say professionals advised me not to. But when's that ever stopped me before? So as you can see before me, I have my house plans. And there's nothing that says you have to hire a general contractor to build your house. And except essentially every general contractor, which says you need a general contractor to build your house. I looked deeper than that, and I was like, all right, why? What do you do? What am I getting? What value am I getting? And then I make the determination. So I went through this process. I even made a video about, like, should I GC my own house or not? And all the YouTube contractors out there were like, you're gonna cost you 3 times as much. So the way I learned, and what I learned so far, was that everybody who's a general contractor will come in and say, like, look, they'll do one of 2 things. They'll give you a flat rate and allowances to build your house, right? They're gonna say, we'll just use $1 million. I will build your house for, let's see, more reasonable numbers. Let's say $500,000. I will build your house for $500,000, right? And in that $500,000, you'll have allowances. So if I agree to build this, I'm gonna give you $5,000 for kitchen cabinets. I'm going to give you $3,000 for appliances. I'm going to give you $2,000 for a tub. So they'll do that. And anything in excess of that, you'll have to pay for. Now, when you read through their contracts, there'll be stuff that's not included, like owner will supply door, owner will supply this, owner will supply that. So right there, the $500,000, if it's not all inclusive, is going to be $525,000. Not a big deal. But in that $500,000 all-in estimate or quote, the builder is coming at you and giving you a price for something that they are making their money inside that. So I was like, all right, that's one way to approach it. I don't really like that because in order for them to do that and feel comfortable doing that, they've got to be padding that pretty substantially to put a lot of money in their pocket. A lot of general contractors aren't swinging the hammers, right? They're sitting there just watching and scheduling, and there's a value to all of this, problem solving, getting ahead of things. But I'm pretty good at all that, and I understand stuff. I may not be able to understand complex wiring diagrams and heat loss calculations, but I can understand why things are done, what's right, what's not right, and I can probably do everything a general contractor could do. And that's why maybe not professionally yet, maybe not to the extent that they're able to do it, especially if they've been doing it for a while, but I do have that skill set. So I backed it up, and then the other thing they would do, there's the other option for a general contractor, would be cost plus. Cost plus means you, the homeowner, will pay whatever everything costs and then mark it up, just say 10 or 15%, just say 10% for easy math, mark it up 10%. So if the house costs you $500,000 to build, right? You'll help me. We'll go look for competitive estimates and bids. I've got guys that I've worked with. You've maybe got guys. If you're paying a plumber $20,000, you're going to give me 2. So you're going to give me $2,000 above that for helping manage that plumber. And every step along the way. So say your house costs $400,000 to build or $500,000 to build, I'm going to get $50,000, supposedly. But that's not how I saw this working out. And I went through and I started breaking it down. There's 3 components that add value to me, to a subcontractor. That's one is his labor, his skill. Like there is a guy who is an artist of his craft. He knows what he's doing. He does it well. He doesn't need me to tell him how to do it. I can tell when he's doing it right. But he is a professional. I don't need to micromanage. That's why you hire a professional. You could see previous works. You could see reviews. You can get third-party opinions as to the guy's qualifications and make a determination whether that guy is good to go with or not. I've got that. I'm good at shopping, and then I'm good at seeing where the value is. Second thing is, what sort of equipment are they using? Like say a guy is going to cost $10,000 for a day's worth of work, but he's bringing in a $4 million machine. Yeah, there's a value to that machine. That guy had to buy the machine. It's very different than a guy trying to charge $10,000 and he's bringing in a shovel. Because then I'm like, well, okay, you got a shovel and two guys helping you with shovels. It's 3 shovels and 2 guys and a pickup truck, which you can use that pickup truck for like 10 years. $10,000 is a lot of money for that. Like that's a lot of labor for one guy, maybe 2 days, 3 days, because he doesn't have the $10 million machine. And the third thing that goes into the cost calculation is the material. So it's very simple. If there's now a material component, like guy coming in to pour the foundation, whatever, not even pour the foundation, but to do the piping in the house. The pipes cost money. How much do pipes cost? Let's just say the pipes cost $5,000 for the plumbing, right? Guy's got a toolbox, no real special equipment. 1 or 2 guys come in, and he wants to charge me $50,000 in labor for, just say, 2 weeks worth of work. And I was like, well, that's $25,000 a week. And even if they're like 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day, you start to add up and you're like, well, that's more than lawyers charge. So you could sort of work your way backwards just to see if the subcontractor is even in the ballpark as to what something's going to cost. I go one step further because I've already declared that I'm going to be GCing it myself. I go one step further and go to Google and look what something's going to cost. I understand I'm building in one of the most expensive places to build in the United States. I get it. But I can still get a baseline as to what concrete should cost, as to what plumbing should cost. Like, at a certain point in time, materials are very similar. When I'm talking even retail materials, not even wholesale materials, which I'm essentially able to get as well. The contractors tried to sell me on the fact that I wouldn't be able to do it without them because I'm not going to be able to get the same guys that they get, these good guys that will only work for the contractors. They won't work for a homeowner. And then if they do, I'm not going to get their pricing, right? Well, they're wrong. I started out as I'm interviewing these guys. The cheapest I was able to get as a quote was $787,000 to build my house, just my house. And I was like, okay, $787,000. Then even that didn't include certain things, appliances. It didn't include, which I have a bunch of them already, but it didn't include the appliances. It didn't include certain things like the septic tank. So you start doing all this, and it didn't include all the permits and everything, which I've already spent $100,000 to get, and almost $100,000. It's a different video. You've seen that already. But when you look at that, you're like, okay, well, so now you're saying soup to nuts. If you were to do the permitting and everything like that, you're going to charge $800,000 for a house that's just say 2,100 square foot footprint, even if you're going to include the finished basement, that's 3 floors. So, all right, you get it. But it seemed like a lot to me. And it seemed like these guys saying that they're only making $75,000 or $100,000 on it was a little bit far-fetched. As I ask for breakdowns of numbers, and they sort of hit or miss. Everybody breaks them down differently. They're a little all over the place. The closest I came to working with a contractor was a guy who said he would do everything to dry in the house. So that means he was going to, but not pay for the windows, but he would put the windows in. Pay for all the materials. He'd get the site work done. He'd do the foundation. He'd frame the house. He'd put the windows on, put the doors on, and then leave it for me to then finish from there. And maybe roofing and siding. I don't think roofing and siding was included in that, but I would have to pay for the windows, roofing and siding. He was at $350,000. I'm like, all right, like this is early on. I'm like, sounds good, but you got to break it down. I got to see what these things would cost. Now, looking back, that guy would have been making $200,000 on me for 2 months worth of work, and maybe 2.5 months worth of work, whatever it is. Contractors, they say, look, 8 months to build a house. I'm new to this, but I think I've got a pretty decent handle on it, and I think I've found a way to see through all of this and to find the value where there's value to be had and to be able to build my house primarily by reading a book. Thumbnail. Just kidding. That book sucks. And I'm not kidding. I actually bought this book as a prop for this video. And I went through it, and I'm like, wow, this is not a very useful book. I didn't like the way it was laid out. I'm not going into this blind, but I'm not kidding you. I'm essentially learning how to build a house on YouTube. Like, for every trade, for every profession, the way I was approaching this was I was breaking down the house as far as budgeting for it first by breaking down all the different subcontractors. I've got about 18 different line items for subcontractors. I may be able to combine some as we go forward. But at this point in time, as I move through phase by phase, I realized there's about 18 different line items that I needed a budgetary number next to. Start doing that budget, sat down with my architect to design these blueprints, learn how to look at the blueprints, and I start to get a feel for where I'm going. And when you have the blueprints done, you can go to these different tradesmen and say, boom, here's the blueprints. Let me get the electrical quote. Let me get the plumbing quote. Let me get there's something that you do. One of the first things will be getting a lumber takeoff. You go to any of these big lumber companies locally and say, can you give me a takeoff? A takeoff is essentially, they will look at your plans. They will come up with what they think you need for lumber to build your house, all the wood that you'll need, and then they will charge. Generally, some of them charge, some of them don't, but they'll charge $250 or something like that, just for the labor of having to go through and do that. And in exchange for that, if you buy your wood through them, they will then take that off the cost. So if I paid $250 for a takeoff from one of these companies and I ended up buying the wood through them, they'll then knock that down by $250. It's sort of a prepayment towards the thing. So once you have your budget done, then you can start lining up your subcontractors. How I've been going at the different subcontractors is to start with somebody that is renowned as good. And early on, the company Wiggers that does the site work was what I started with as a bar. And the reason was because everybody that I said, like, oh yeah, I just called around, but I said, these guys wrote my estimate as I asked. Hey, could you just break it down so I can see everything line by line and we can go through it? And it was, including the septic, almost $70,000, maybe a little over $70,000 in site work. And I start going through, I'm like, oh, you're charging me $4,000 to remove the old driveway. The old driveway staying. Boom, right there's $4,000. Then it was another $3,000 to lay down RCA, which is like a recycled concrete aggregate, on the ground, which is like chopped up stone, so you have something to drive the trucks in and out, and it just doesn't turn the whole site into a mess. So I'm like, okay, we can move these two off, move these two off. Then other stuff that I was just like, oh, you know what, like I don't need this could be done by this guy. And when you start going through everything, then I've got these guys coming to the site like, oh, you can't get my guys. And I'm like, well, I'm using this guy. Oh yeah, they're really good. What are they charging you? That's a good price. So here you go. The contractors have completely removed their value from the equation. And now all they're doing is saying, don't do it because you don't know what you're doing. But you know what? It's like anything. You can learn how to do anything. If I was swinging a hammer and putting on my hat and doing the calculations and cutting the wood myself, this house would collapse on top of itself. I promise you. Because I'm not a tradesman. I would not pretend to be a tradesman. I see guys do stuff. I don't even like heights. So me framing the roof of a house never happened. But I am able to hire people to do it. I'm able to work my way through. And Wiggers is able to give me, oh, here's a guy for concrete. Here's a guy for this. And you could start working your way through the network of good guys that you now trust to give you other good guys that they trust. And before you know it, you've got your own assembly of subcontractors that, look, this is early. I don't know what's going to ultimately happen. But right now I'm feeling pretty good about it. I'm learning how to read plans really well. I've got my takeoffs. I've got my estimates. And by my estimates right now, the cheapest I was going to get, my quotes to build a house, essentially all in, were anywhere between $825, and that's what that $787 number, plus the stuff I would have to pay for. So $825 to over $1.1 million to build my house. That's not including the permit fees and everything that I spent, the $100,000. So you're talking, aside from the money I already paid for the house, these guys want between $800,000 and $1.1 million to build my house. Did my budget. And my budget, I started high. Like I started my budget and I sat down with my architect. He's like, oh no, you're too low there, too low there, too low there. Luckily, the numbers that I thought I was going to pay is much closer to where I'm coming in. And every single line item so far, I'm budgeting higher than actual, and that's really good. Except for Wiggers, which is the first one that I started with, which I use them as the budget, and they're coming in exactly where they were supposed to be. Everybody else so far has been below budget. And that's good. So it looks like, and where I'm looking at it right now, this is still very early on, The progress that's been made so far, I should be able to build this house before Rob Daum gets his 4-rotor done. That's a given. But I should be able to build this house for probably $250,000 less, at least, than what was quoted by anybody. And $250,000 to $500,000 using the same materials. My guys versus their guys doesn't really matter. Same quality. We're not saving on quality here. We're not going to be like, you know what, just throw some plastic in there instead of wood. No, this is going to be done with everything that's on these plans is calling for specific materials, cedar siding, architectural shingles. I mean, you're talking, I'm doing radiant heated floors throughout the house. I mean, there's not like skimping, sauna, steam room, wine cellar, gym. Like the appliance, the stuff that I don't get is stuff that's wasteful. I'm not getting Viking stoves and everything like that because I don't really care. But everything else is like top notch. It's going to be a gorgeous luxury house that I'm building for at least $250,000 less than anyone quoted me. So that means at the very minimum, all of these contractors were going to be making at least $250,000 off of my one house in 6 or 8 months, which I'm sort of okay with if I didn't know what I was doing. But $250,000, it's a lot of money. And there's one thing I learned in life, is it's a lot easier to save money than it is to earn it, because earning money takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. And especially in a situation where you may be borrowing money, borrowing that extra $250,000, you know what? That might cost you $500,000, $600,000 by amortizing that over the life of a mortgage. Even if it's $400,000, that's a lot of money that's somebody's retirement after 30 years. You take $250,000 now and put it towards retirement over 30 years, big difference, right? So wish me luck. So far, my little get up, I've got this book, which I'm not using. Got a pair of gloves. And just to square everything off, 100-foot tape measure. So wish me luck, Rob Ferretti. Learning how to build a house on YouTube, and I'm going to live in it in a couple of months. Thanks for watching. Wish me luck. All of you YouTube contractors, drop your hate in the comments right now. I love reading that stuff. You're never going to do that, blah, 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 blah. You're just trying to add value to your own existence. I get it. For somebody that's not good at problem solving, somebody that's not has no concept of I don't want to say calculus, but has no concept of quality, what looks right, what doesn't look right. If you're not good at any sort of engineering, I'd probably recommend getting a contractor. But the only thing I've learned with contractors is that everybody that's used a contractor, virtually everybody's like, yeah, I wouldn't use that guy. They regret using the contractor. Doesn't mean they could have done it themselves, but they didn't have a good experience. Every single intelligent person that I've met that has subcontracted their own house has said it's the best decision they ever made, and they saved a ton of money. So sort of where I'm looking to be. I'm excited. You guys, I will keep you in the loop as to this journey, and I hope you enjoy watching me or rooting for me, rooting against me in this process. This book, I should probably return this to Amazon, but I thought it was a funny gag. I was like, oh, look, building houses for dummies. For those of you not familiar with my other company, I started a company called Adventure Drives, which combines driving and bucket list travel. It's a lot of fun. If you're interested, prices can be done per person. Don't worry, if you don't have somebody to go with you, we can match you up with somebody. You can check the link in the description for adventuredrives.com and sign up today.